One A Manhattan. Jared Wassinger here with Jason Hilders. I got a couple topics that Jason and I are going to be conversing about today. One being our most recent discussion item with the City Commission last Tuesday. It was a legislative meeting, but we had a discussion item really teeing up our City Commissioner's goal setting retreat, which is going to be this Friday. And we had department heads in the City Manager's office really go in front of the governing body to talk about a recap of 2019, goals and projects for 2020, as well as initiatives and needs for each department and the organization that are on the horizon. Next Tuesday, or this Tuesday, tomorrow actually, we're going to be having a little follow-up from the 0.3 sales tax initiative and talking about funding those 6 projects that we've been, feels like talking about on Monday in Manhattan forever, including North Campus Corridor, Aggieville, and Levy, and the airport, among others. So first off, Jason, what's your feel with this organizational excellence initiative that we've been talking about with our city commission? We don't really talk a lot about our organization as a whole to the governing body. We talk about projects. We talk about operations, making sure people have water, making sure our streets get rehabilitated, building recreation centers. But we really, at least not publicly, talk about the over 400 people who work for our organization, that we pay and provide benefits for and provide a workplace for and an environment for, a professional one, and the feedback that we receive from them and how we improve their lives and their jobs with the city. That was really kind of the first time, I've been with the city for about 4 years now, so that was the first time we'd really discussed that with the city commission when I was there, and there's a lot of things that we had to talk about.
Yeah, we heard from all our department heads really along those topics. Everything from pay and benefits, work hours, work environment, our budget, performance evaluations. We kind of categorically went down those 6 with our organization, and you and Dennis and I have worked with a number of different employees, all departments. Kind of kicked off with the employee satisfaction survey, which we conducted for a couple of years, looked at results and started to recognize some trends, some things, some data that came back that showed us there's some areas that we need to focus on.
I had just started out as a management assistant back in 2017, and we had a few interns in the city manager's office, and we had departments that would do kind of service satisfaction surveys. How is HR providing, services to the organization? How is IT, finance? But we really had never done, an employee satisfaction survey to gauge satisfaction, not only with city manager's office leadership, department head leaderships, but then the facets that go in with being an employee in any organization. Pay, benefits, the things we were talking about, workplace environment, the feedback, constructive professional feedback that you get from your supervisors and how that plays into your career within an organization. And there was a lot of good results in there. People were proud to work for the city. That was a really high one. They feel that they're providing that help and community benefit to the citizens that live here. There was some dissatisfaction in a lot of things related to, performance evaluations. And that was something that we look back to our organization and our supervisors, how can we train them to be the best supervisor that they can be. Of those 6 areas, Jason, we did focus groups with all of our employees. And the 6 areas that, that we, Jason just touched on: pay, benefits, workplace environment. Work hours is one thing. That's a changing environment for not only the public sector but the private sector. And then we also talked about budget and how we not only budget with the city commission but how we communicate that to our organization. We asked them to rank and prioritize those. You probably know the answer, but what do you think was number 1?
Yeah, when you ask folks to put it on paper, it's about pay. Yeah. And when we look at that as an organization, staying competitive, since last 5 years, I know several people that have moved on to other communities. They've taken a better opportunity, and it fit for them to move at that time and to relocate and start that new job. But we have to look at that in terms of recruiting, and retainment of quality employees. So when we talk about pay, there's something we haven't done for quite some time, and that's truly a pay study that'll actually not only look internally at how our people are paid, but how they compare to other communities that we would consider peers in terms of possibly even recruiting and trying to retain the same type of talent. We're finding less and less people choosing to go down this path, this municipal, local government service type of path. One thing that came out in our survey that I found very interesting was almost half of our employees have been with us for 5 or less years. So there's a transition taking place. So you have this new group of people, over 200 in our organization, that have a different way of looking at their work, a different way of looking at the environment in terms they work in, and their expectations for pay and benefits. So as administration, we've got to allow those thoughts and feedback to surface and take them and work them into policies and how we want to approach moving forward as an organization.
On the flip side of that, you said about half of our organization been with the city for 5 years or less. About 25% have been with the city for 10 years or more. And we've been doing things, pretty consistently. A good example, work hours we bring up, and kind of this idea of work-life balance, vacation and medical leave comes up. We're on a system where new employees accrue 4 hours of vacation and 4 hours of medical leave. Each pay period adds up to about 12 hours a year, or 12 days a year for both. And we allow employees to accrue that, so it benefits tenure. If you put in the time, work with the organization for a long time, you can have quite a bit of bank of vacation and medical leave coming up. We're looking at a lot of not only public sector but private sector. They're moving towards a PTO, paid time off system. They say, we're going to give you 20 days off a year. You use it how you need to. Save it for medical, save it for vacation, save it for when your AC breaks down and you need to stay home for the afternoon. It gives that new employee the flexibility right up front to have more of a workplace or work-life balance. So those are the things that we're hearing from our organization.
I do think a lot of what we're hearing is very similar in the private sector. There's a workforce challenge in the region, even throughout the state, to find qualified individuals to do the work that's necessary. On the other side of the coin, the organization itself, keeping up with what is expected. We have service industries within our own organization: finance, human resources, legal. These areas benefit all departments involved with providing services back to the community. We haven't seen those grow or expand very much in the last 10, 15 years to provide more of a backbone to all those services. It's surfacing. We're having a lot of pushback and issues in those areas because we haven't invested in them. It requires resources. It requires an investment back in your organization, in those departments. Increase the resources, increase the staffing levels, and bring that professionalism back into and spread it across all departments. Part of our challenge there is about how we transition away from how we've been for so long into this next era. And we've got a lot of feedback from the organization, even people outside of HR, legal, and finance, suggesting we need more resources in this area. One case in particular is we get a lot of new supervisors that elevate up through the organization. They may have started at an entry-level position. They work hard. They do well. They're a high performer. They get
recognized.
They get transitioned into a supervisory role. We struggle with training. We struggle with arming that individual with the appropriate amount of resources to be an effective leader, an effective supervisor. We lean on them because they're a high performer to go ahead and then understand how to lead others. And some of that doesn't translate very well. And we've got some frustration in the organization about that. I like the ability to have a sustainable program where we're growing our own, but we need the resources available through HR to assist them become better supervisors.
So a question for you. The things that we want to do with this organizational excellence initiative, which really involves, taking a lot of time, train more people, provide more resources within our administrative functions. We were talking about it the other day that, some of those departments just haven't grown in the last 10 years from a number of employees standpoint to serve the 400 other individuals and all the projects that we do. And a lot of that it's difficult to explain that to the public. We can say that we passed a sales tax, increased $2 million for street maintenance, and people can start to see that the roads are being, fixed up. Mm-hmm. It's hard for us to explain to the public when we get a new HR professional who can provide training to all of the hundreds of supervisors that we have who oversee all of the duties and the lives of our employees. That's really hard to explain. In your mind, how do we continue to provide all the services to the public and then increase those administrative functions for our organization and really, take out, that supervisor or that crew from the field and provide those trainings to them?
It's going to require us to slow down and really take the time to dedicate back towards the organization, the resources necessary. This isn't going to be easy, and it's not going to be convenient for the organization to do this. It's going to take a commitment of time, but a commitment of resources as well. There are a number of ways to come about this, and even internally, we get a lot of feedback on a strategic plan. There's strategic plans for communities in which cities embark on, and there are also strategic plans internally. There are performance measures that we could be looking at internally to make sure we're operating at a high level versus not having performance measures, not having a true strategy in which we're all working towards. Some of this will involve the governing body and getting the elected officials to buy into a vision, buy into a strategy that we are all a part of and working towards. We've managed that in the past fairly loosely and really worked with our governing body just to kind of hone in on the items and issues in which they were their focus. But much like we've adopted comprehensive plans in Manhattan, which takes several years with consultants to work through all of the land uses that you see on that map, and where you're going to expand to in the event your population increases and you have more density and you want to see more commercial residential type of development, you kind of have a vision for where that's going to occur. And you'll start to swell here, you'll build up here. Internally, we also need that look. We've been expanding in areas like Public Works. We've added additional 4-person street crews to go out and fix those potholes because we keep getting the feedback. We get feedback on the Park and Rec side. Hey, these programs, we need 3 pools instead of 1 pool. We put that out to vote and it actually passed. We need 3 pools, not just 1. Yeah. We've got 2 middle school recreation centers. We have a Douglas Recreation Center. That's 3 recreation centers. There were proposals to go 1. The feedback, 3. So as we go out and get that feedback, now you have to go staff and operate these facilities. It can be incremental, but the incremental has to be both exterior-wise, what we're providing services to the community, but the interior has to be incremental as well. And we've remained fairly stagnant in our HR, finance, and legal support for the organization. And we're really here
too,
IT as well.
IT as well. Sure. There's a lot of services that individuals are really asking us to provide, from paying your bills online, getting your pet license online. All of this kind of ties in together, and having that staff and expertise will really help us move forward and keep growing. So not only you can see all the growth from a visual perspective when you're driving through our community and you know that things are happening, but when you interact with the city government, whether it's through a planning item, a zoning item, daily business with the city, those efficiencies are there too, for sure.
There's something about this organization and this community that it's what keeps us here. But we have quality people.
The hometown discount.
We have quality people working for this community, working in this organization, who are so dedicated to providing that service. There's a lot of things that we've done over the years in the absence of HR, legal, and accounting and finance that have still allowed the community to move forward. We have reached a point, in my opinion, where we have to give back to those internal ops in order for us to continue to provide the level of service that we have and our citizens have become so accustomed to.
So we had a phone call this morning with SGR. They're a consulting firm that we hired. Many of you may have been watching the legislative meeting on Tuesday or read in the Mercury. Our finance director, Bernie Hain, said he's retiring after about 20 years. So he's going to be leaving in June. So we actually went out to hire a headhunter because we used the funds that we're not paying right now because we're lacking an assistant finance director too, to go out and headhunt for a finance director. We had a call with them and they really wanted to know about, the challenges and the opportunities that would come with coming to work for the city of Manhattan. I guess I'd like to, have you kind of repeat some of those answers. Just one, here's your opportunity to pitch to everyone and why working for the city is really enjoyable, and there's a lot of cool things going on, not only within the community that you get to work on, but within our organization, and then the challenges.
Yeah, the opportunities I think are fairly evident. I mean, as Manhattan, we get the opportunity to work on a lot of really cool projects, a lot of really cool initiatives that make Manhattan more attractive. Manhattan is attractive, is considered progressive within the state. You have to get into the KC metro area or possibly even Wichita to find organizations and communities that would be on par or above. But as far and Lawrence as well. If you really take a look at where Lawrence is headed, they're in a very strong position right now. Manhattan needs to maintain that strength. We've got a great pull factor. We get a lot of people that come in, use this as a regional shopping center. Obviously, the university and bringing in the talent they do, both professionally and from a student perspective. We're ripe. We're so ripe for opportunity. And we need to continue to advance that. We've worked on some great things in the past. We've got some great things in the future. And I think we can put in place to maintain that attractiveness. The challenge is circle back to our previous conversation. It's the investment back in within this organization. These aren't areas in which we go to the governing body, as you mentioned, and are easy to see. People in HR, people in finance, people in legal are not, they're not on the exterior. The community can't just say, oh, there it is. There's another street crew out filling potholes. Or, wow, they really got to our snow fast. Or, look how manicured our parks are. Or, the facilities that our kids play our sports in. They're in great condition out at Annenberg and Seco. Those are things we can visibly see. But all those folks are supported by those departments inside. Finance is going to have some challenges. We're looking at some staffing levels right now that are really not appropriate for a community our size. We need to reinvest there and shore up those shortages and get ready to move forward. It's a new day and it's a new opportunity for us to relook at this opportunity, at this department, and structure it in a way that we want to set it in place for the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot about administrative employees, administrative departments. I do want to just shift to our operational employees too, because those are very similar to the private sector as well, that can lure away a lot of our talent. I mean, we're talking, private construction companies, comparable to our street, water, wastewater distribution crews, whether it's a construction company, Kansas Gas, Westar, they have the ability to really take away some of that talent too. Parks is a good example too. There's a lot of landscaping. So it's similar, that it's not just our administrative folks, so we need to provide that benefit to our operations folks too. We've talked a lot about the joint maintenance facility and really just the kind of archaic conditions of some of our facilities that a lot of our ops individuals are working in, and how we really need to recreate a space for them to really grow and thrive.
Yeah, it's another opportunity, like you said, to enhance some of our facilities that are 60, 70, 80 years old. It's reached its life. It's time to create some efficiencies by having folks consolidate in an area that then they can provide services back to the organization and the community in a much more effective and efficiently than we have in the past. You know, the competition for services and positions in Manhattan are interesting. I hear from a lot of our folks, there are alternatives, there are opportunities that are different than ours. Most of them are not 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. That is what we do offer for a lot of our positions. Not all our positions are that way. We have treatment plants that run 24 hours a day. We have a lot of park and rec operations that are open in evenings and weekends. But from a maintenance worker perspective, on the street side or the fleet or anything associated with water and sewer distribution, we're trying to get that done 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. It gives people the opportunity then to go home, spend time with their families, have their evenings and their weekends, with the exception of snow removal and some other things that might, flood fight that might bring them out at other times of the day. That's our attractiveness. That and you know, our pay may be a little lower, but our benefits may offset that a little bit. But the 8 to 5 Monday to Friday approach isn't necessarily what you find in the private sector for the similar type of work. So we recognize we need to be competitive, but we also recognize there's a difference between those construction crews that work 10, 11, 12 hours a day, especially, you know, when the weather's nice and they're out there. We'll start early in the morning, we'll end a little bit early in the afternoon. The work's this, you know, the actual labor, the type of work is the same, but it's not always necessarily apples and apples when comparing a job to another. We've had folks go out and come back in, go out and come back in, and some of the feedback we've received is they really appreciate the time that we set forth, you know, that 40-hour work week that isn't always there in the private sector.
We'll be certainly carrying over this conversation with our city commissioners this Friday. We're kind of having an all-day retreat with them, the 5 elected officials in the city manager's office at the Flint Hills Discovery Center for the day to, one, hone in on a lot of this OEI and organizational excellence, internal strategic plan for our organization. Of course, we're also going to talk about, you know, all the other big projects and operational goals for the community. This ties into, you know, briefly, Jason, we can talk a little bit about tomorrow's work session. Starts at 5:30 in the city commission room, and we're really going to be going over finance options for the 0.3 sales tax projects that were on the ballot, and how we're going to move forward with funding those.
Yeah, we highlight kind of where the mill levy is in this community. For a lot of taxpayers, that's a complicated process at which a lot of our citizens don't quite understand how their taxes are figured or possibly even where they go. We'll go back through that math for them. A lot of folks probably have a good sense of what their property is worth from an appraisal standpoint. Riley County comes out on an annual basis and kind of tells you what your house is worth or your business. And then you start getting notifications later in the year, October, November, about how much in taxes you owe. We'll break that down for folks a little bit. We're well over 150 mills within this community, and everybody then asks, well, what is a mill? What is a mill? It's 1/1000th of the value of your home. In Kansas, residential properties have an 11.5% assessed value. Commercial properties have 25%. So the valuation, the appraisal, the mill levy, it's all kind of combined into a formula that then generates how much you owe in property taxes.
You talked about the 156. That's actually split up between, well, 4, but 3 government entities. Only about 1.5 of that mill actually goes to the state of Kansas.
Yep.
If you're really breaking that down like a dollar, you know, and we have some figures and some calculations that we'd be happy to go over one of these Mondays and really break down that dollar. But, you know, about 1 mil goes to the state. Roughly a little over a third goes to the school district. A third of it goes to Riley County, and then a third of it goes to the city of Manhattan out of that whole 156 property tax mills that we're talking about here.
Yep. And we break it down even further and show like the 4.7 mills that are in bond and interest that help support all the infrastructure projects that people drive on, people experience in the parks, people experience in terms of infrastructure, water and sewer, Our participation in some of those has been funded through the bond and interest fund. And then you've got a whole nother levy that supports our operation. I will say categorically, Manhattan, the city of, runs a lot of its operations on sales tax. We generate, $11 million on 1%. We have 1.45. We also get percentages of the county's sales tax. All told, 16 to 17 million dollars of our $32 million general fund is from sales tax. We only have about $11 million coming into that 32 that are actually from property taxes. And like I said, a little under half goes into debt from that property tax allotment. So there's a lot of property tax that are levied and spent at RCPD. There's a lot of property tax levied and spent within the county and at the school district as well as the city. And there's complete breakdowns on our website of all of those. But we'll go back through that for the commission. And then we'll talk to them about those projects, the 6 that were out in the .3, 4 of which we've basically either made a determination on or have a suggested path forward that doesn't involve a mill levy. We've moved the Douglas Center forward, so that construction should start soon. It will have a mill levy impact, and the commission was aware of that when they voted for it and moved it forward. Joint maintenance facility, we have slid the property tax into our stormwater fees that'll be part of future revenues coming out of the stormwater fund. So there's no property tax impacts in that particular project. The airport is a project that is moved ahead a couple years, but the strategy.
So we have some time to figure out
right
necessarily how to pay for that.
Yep, and we've kind of talked about, possibly the economic development tax renewing, possibly being part of an infrastructure. So it's anywhere from $4 to $8 million that we'll have to spend at the airport runway, with the federal government picking up 90% of that project. We've got the levy, which our strategy moving forward is mainly stormwater funds, possibly some water and sewer that would go into that.
Why water and sewer?
Water and sewer will allow us to capture folks who don't necessarily live in Manhattan but buy our water and we treat their sewer, and they're both behind the levy, and the levy
so if the levy fails, water and wastewater treatment facilities are maybe
would be compromised, and all of us would have trouble with getting water or returning our sewer to the plant. So the levy's very important.
It just doesn't sound good.
Doesn't sound good at all. So we've looked at those utility funds to possibly help us capture some of our customers that are outside the city. Then you got Aggieville and North Campus Corridor that are both very expensive to move forward with. There's a lot of substantial infrastructure involved with both of those. Both of those projects would pose us challenges moving forward to accommodate the growth and accommodate aging infrastructure if we did nothing. We would have CIPs coming in the near future to address those aging infrastructure issues. There are obviously enhancements as part of the vision for both of those that we're talking about in the pedestrian areas, sidewalks and lighting, and some entry features and more artistic features that are part of both of those. A lot more to come on Aggieville, still under some final design, so there's still some concepts out there to react to, parking garage. But we have relied on the mill levy and some property taxes in some of our scenarios moving forward, as well as a sales tax question, whether that's part of the economic development renewal or separate questions. Probably more of a 10-year term on these now. We got the reactions and feedback from the .3 that they didn't like the general nature of the permanency of the tax, so we would probably come back with questions that were specific for a time frame to support both of those.
Either way, coming up with this presidential election, it'll be an opportunity for a lot more people to vote than they normally do during a local election.
Correct.
We had about 6,000 or so Manhattan residents vote during the local election in 2019. During the 2016 presidential election, I think we had maybe 16,000 city of Manhattan voters vote. So a lot more people coming to the poll. Like you said, we're really eyeing some type of possible question to help fund that gap still with a couple of these projects. you mentioned North Campus Corridor and Aggieville are the two that there's still really a gap if we really want to fully see those visions come to fruition within those districts. So looking at the economic development sales tax renewal, or looking at a special sales tax like our other streets and quality of life ones. 10 years, it sunsets, it's dedicated toward that specific money, and or those specific projects, and you can't use the money elsewhere, things like that. That was a lot of the feedback that at least I heard from people that I spoke with. So.
And we get comments, throughout the community of, why can't you do those things within your existing budgets? Look at your existing revenues. How can you work these projects in without increasing our taxes to move forward? It's really, some of that is just an education on how we function. So of the $32 million in the general fund, over $20 million of that is for people. So our 420 employees work for 8 different departments delivering services all throughout the community. So there are a lot of benefits and even revenues being generated from our departments as they're out there operating. And if we start cutting back on people and cutting back on services, we're also going to probably trim back on some revenues that go along with those. But it can be done. I mean, we're the municipality. If the commission would like to see us reduce services, reduce the number of people that we have, it can be done. Less services will be delivered, and possibly the community would be fine with that in order to gain the projects moving forward. Philosophically, local governments tend to have this incremental approach to them, whereas at some time that service was vetted, and the elected body at that time, the majority said, yes, we want to provide that service, keep moving forward. And it's just incrementally stacks on itself. Had we get to 32 million, well, several years of just making decisions along the way. You have inflation, you have the cost of living adjustments, you have remaining competitive in the workplace. All those things combine to get us to 32 million. If the commission would like us to spend 28 million instead of 32, we're going to have a $4 million bogey in terms of, all right, what services do you want to start with not delivering? All right, that impacts this segment of workplace. We can reduce by this number, and we can move forward with that direction. It's very difficult to get into any of our departments and say, don't hire here, don't hire here, don't hire here, with the expectation that services will actually drop. The correlation between services and people sometimes is difficult to do. We talked about finance, legal, and HR. You take people out of those departments, and the other departments continue to function. They need those services. So now you're on the exterior. Now you're on the public works, the park and rec, the fire, the airport. What about those 4 do you do less in? And then you get into pothole repairs, snow removal, taking care of our parks, running the programs that we have. And again, it's been incremental decisions. At some point, this community said build 3 pools. At this point, somebody said, yes, fund the zoo, let's subsidize that operation. At some point, somebody said, build the Discovery Center, fund it, yes, we'll subsidize that operation. Those things can backtrack. They will be difficult to do because our community...
It's a tough conversation to have.
Absolutely. But that's the type of conversation we're looking at.
Yeah, and you mentioned a lot of communities do a strategic plan. And they really, it's a long process where you go get feedback from your governing body, have focus groups throughout the community, do community surveys. Something that we've been doing, recently over the last few years is asking that feedback about the priorities and how to spend the public dollar and where you should cut back if you really need to. So those are conversations we're definitely going to have with the city commission not only tomorrow, but this Friday during their city commission goal setting retreat, and we'll come back with a report on that next week. If anyone has any comments, one related to Organizational Excellence Initiative and maybe what your organizations are doing, I think that'd be really cool to hear from other people in Manhattan about how they're addressing some of these issues. And then 2, of course, the 0.3 sales tax follow-up work session.
We had one comment, but I think there's a question in it from Jared Coleman wondering if we've considered moving to a 4 10-hour workdays instead of 5 8-hour workdays as a way to be attractive.
We have actually implemented that in certain divisions. Customer service, those personnel actually have a 4-10 schedule. We're open 5 days a week. We're actually open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. in customer service in City Hall. But those individuals that occupy those positions work 4 10-hour days. So it's been implemented. It's working well, we believe, from that perspective. There are others that we would like to pursue. We've received that feedback from employees. The thing that we remind our people about is we may move to 410s, but our availability to the public is more likely going to stay 5 days a week. So it's a matter of shifting resources around throughout the 5-day workday to accommodate that. It doesn't automatically mean to our employees or to the public that we're closed either on Monday or Friday, or that they get that day off. It could be you get a Wednesday off and you work 2 days, Wednesday off, work 2 days.
We have seen other cities actually move to expanded hours Monday through Thursday, and then I know Hayes recently did it. They moved from a 7:30 to 5:30 Monday through Thursday, and then they City Hall and other facilities closed at noon on Friday. Looking at a lot of those operational efficiencies, I think maybe Jared was looking at how do we save money, how do we find some of those ways to keep the productivity but find savings elsewhere. So there's definitely always opportunities that I think our organization can look towards to find those and make those decisions, and then have those conversations with the public to see if they're okay with that, for sure.
And we've transitioned a little bit. We provide more and more online for you to reach the city, conduct your business, reach the services that you need. There are more opportunities for that, and we know that. It's a matter of investing in that software, investing in that infrastructure to help you do your business from home or remotely, so you don't necessarily have to come to City Hall. I know risk reduction, fire are really in the process of trying to almost every building permit becoming an emailed document where you don't have to come pick it up. It's something that will help contractors and builders. Online bill paying right now for water, sewer, storm is available. Don't necessarily have to come into City Hall to pay your bills. Signing up for Park and Rec activities and programs, a lot of those are available online, and your ability to do that remotely is there. And it's something that we would probably continue to do. There are other services people obviously come into the building for that we might be able to provide an online option.
Any other questions, please feel free to put them into the comments, and we'll be sure to address them either in the comments or next week. With that, have a good one.